Tracy Chapman, her self-titled album. In the opening montage, you heard Fast Car, and now you're going to hear Talking About a Revolution.
Talking about a revolution sounds poor people gonna rise up and get their share. Poor people gonna rise up and take what's theirs.
All right, Tracy Chapman. I think this is the only time we're covering her. Did we cover her in the 90s, Sean? I don't know.
No, she has a pretty famous album in the 90s,
Yep.
but we are not covering it.
Yeah, New Beginning's pretty.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I did
1,695 in the 90s, so I don't think we're covering that. But
and that has the song "Give Me One Reason" on it, which
Yeah.
people are probably familiar
it's a
with.
great song.
Okay.
Can I run some numbers here, Josh?
Yes, please.
So Tracy Chapman's debut self-titled album comes in at number 70 in the 1980s, number 7 in 1988, number 495 of all time. It is Tracy Chapman's highest-rated album on Best Ever Albums. This is the only record we're covering tonight that did make Rolling Stone's list. Comes in at number 256 there. And Tracy Chapman is ranked number 444 of overall artist rankings on Best Ever Albums.
Okay, Tracy Chapman was born and raised in Cleveland, Ohio. She started playing guitar and writing songs at age 8, and then she also recorded frequent bullying and racially motivated assaults while growing up there, so that's unfortunate. She attended Tufts University in Massachusetts for college and busked on the streets while she was there. She had her major stage debut in 1985, opening for Linda Tillery at Boston's Strand Theater, which gained her the notice of one of her fellow students, Brian Koppelman. Have you ever been to the Strand Theater, Matt?
I think I have.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Brian Koppelman said, quote, "I was helping organize a boycott protest against apartheid at school, and someone told me there is this great protest singer I should get to play at the rally. Tracy walked on stage and it was like an epiphany. Her presence, her voice, her songs, her sincerity, it all came across." He kept attending shows, but she, and he tried to get her attention and stuff, but she didn't record any demos. He found out that she had recorded demos at the Tufts College radio station, which he took and distributed around to other radio stations, and then he got his father. He tried to get noticed with his father, who was ran a publishing company, SPK Publishing. His name was Charles Koppelman, and eventually signed her to a deal in 1986. At first, she did not take the offer seriously, but then Charles helped her get a deal with Elektra in 1987 after she graduated. Chapman said that, quote, "I have to say I never thought I would get a contract with a major record label. All the time since I was a kid listening to records in the radio, I didn't think there was any indication that record people would find the kind of music that I did marketable, especially when I was singing songs like Talking About a Revolution during the 70s. I didn't see a place for me there," unquote. She recorded this debut album throughout 87 and 88. Many producers did not want to work with her due to the popularity of dance pop and synth pop at the time. So, obviously she's acoustic based, and they just didn't see a market for her type of music. However, David Kirschenbaum decided to produce her since he wanted to work on an acoustic album. He produced the album in 8 weeks, with Chapman working at Power Track Studio in Hollywood, California. He said of Chapman, quote, "I'd been looking for something acoustic to do for some time. There was a sense in the industry of a slight boredom with everything out there, and that people might be willing to listen again to lyrics and to someone who made statements," unquote. Chapman wanted to record simply, or simple kind of production to keep the integrity of her songs, which was her major concern. Kirschenbaum said, quote, "I wanted to make sure that she was in front vocally and thematically, and that everything was built around her." All the songs on this album are from demos that she had done, except Fast Car, which was actually recorded last for the album. She said later in a Guardian interview, quote, "The first record is seen as being more social commentary, more political, but I think it's all just about perspective." She performed Fast Car at Nelson Mandela's 70th birthday at Wembley Stadium. She had a short set in the afternoon, but then filled in last minute later on for Stevie Wonder, who was having technical difficulties. And this is credited as being a huge increase in her sales to the single and to her album as a whole. Fast Car went on to number 6 on the Billboard Hot 100, and just 2 weeks after release, the album came out April 5th, 1988. She sold over 1 million copies, becoming a big commercial success. Eventually, she went multi-platinum. At the 89 Grammys, she was nominated for 3 Grammys for Album of the Year, but she didn't win that, but she won for Best Contemporary Folk Album. Fast Car was nominated for Song and Record of the Year, but she won for Best Female Pop Performance and won Best New Artists at the Grammys that year. I'll just do the short postscript now. Her follow-up 1989 album, Crossroads, was less successful, but still platinum in the US. Her 4th album, New Beginning, had Give Me One Reason from 95. She won Grammy that year for Best Rock Song and was her biggest hit. Her last album came out in 2008 called Our Bright Future, earned her another Grammy for Best Contemporary Folk Album, and in 2015 she released a Greatest Hits album. More recently, in October 2018, Chapman sued Nicki Minaj over copyright infringement, alleging that Minaj had sampled her song Baby Can I Hold You without permission. There was 2 different charges or complaints filed against her, and the judge ruled on the first one that Minaj's experimentation with the song constituted fair use rather than copyright infringement. And then, however, the judge ruled that the second count of the complaint should go to trial, and in 2021 the dispute was settled.
So
Minaj paid.
Say, you have to give me one reason to steal, is what he says.
Yeah. Minaj settled and paid Chapman $450,000 for use of the sample. So I haven't heard.
And she did then. Yeah.
So I need to go. I didn't think to listen to that song because I was curious as to what she actually used. But what did you guys think of this self-titled debut album from Tracy Chapman? How about you, John?
Yeah, this is another like if my dad was playing the Traveling Wilburys on one like cassette in the car, then my mom was playing like Tracy Chapman, amongst some other things we've talked about, like on the.
We should have had them on as guests.
Yeah, I don't even think they listen to the podcast. I don't know how to do this, so yeah, I don't know if they would have worked, but I think it's this album. I just remember her winning like a metric shit ton of Grammys this year too for this album, and kind of just exploding out. And she, we're getting to the point now where like I have memories of people, albeit child's memories of people, right? So they're not fully fleshed in. And she was a striking figure in that era because there weren't a lot of people that looked like her and had that serious energy, I'd say. I would not call her androgynous, but I would definitely say she was not that over the top feminine, right, that was being put out a lot. She was another, we talked about Katie Lang before, and she was not as androgynous as say Katie Lang was, but she also was not traditionally, would you say that's safe to say, guys, like kind of like a little bit more androgynous?
Well, and especially she had like short, like she's got short hair, very, very short hair. So it's certainly not.
Yeah, short with close crop dreadlocks was the look I remember at this time, right? Standing out. You just did not see many people who looked that way, right?
Wasn't a feminine look. Yeah.
Right, well, and there was also a seriousness to her, like a no-frills thing to her. And when you heard her songs when I was a kid, I thought, well, she plays serious music, is what I thought. Like, you know what I mean? And that's like for adults, and I liked Fast Car, but I understood that probably Fast Car was about things that I didn't quite understand because, like, it's a song for adults, so it's about like adult things, right? And I was absolutely right, by the way, because like, about talking about like the drive between like your responsibilities and wanting to be free in the world and how others took journey, but sort of that and desiring to get into Fast. Yeah, that is something that like when you're like 8. Right, 7, you're not understanding, but you also can get the groove, right? Because it's a remarkably good song. And I remember Baby Can I Hold You too. It's a very groovy song. So that first initial things. I lump kind of Tracy Chapman in this era with what I call like sort of proto Lilith Fair a little bit, where they're singing about, I guess, what would later be called like politically correct female, I guess what you would call both feminist, but also like sort of like wanting a kinder, gentler world kind of, and societal issues. So in that sense, she's sort of like Natalie Merchant, who we covered, right? People like Sarah McLachlan and stuff who would come later, you know, we're going to cover them soon, but like the Indigo Girls, right? Like there's a lot of these individuals that I think fall into that. And by the way, I don't say politically correct with the sort of edge, right, that a lot of people do it now. I think it's more just sort of talking about society. Would we say sort of like left leaning a little bit with like sort of what I guess would be called modern liberal values, sort of mainstream feminism, but also, you know, in Tracy Chapman's feminism, sort of, I guess, the beginning of, I guess, what now would be called sort of more like the queer feminism, right? You know what I mean? The feminism coming from like an LGBTQ or non, you know, heterosexual, cisgender, whatever you want to call thing, right? You know what I mean? Like, I guess would be there. Because, yeah, there's a lot of skirting around pronouns here and stuff like that, right?
Also, I should point out, John, that she's never publicly disclosed her sexual orientation.
And that's why I'm going, it's once again, it's ambiguous and when I say, you know, that paradigm, it's not necessarily putting it directly in that, but also like, I don't want to be pigeonholed into like traditional, you know what I mean, gender roles / relationships, right? Like it's a little bit more, you know, fluid, right? I guess would be the best way to describe it.
It's not really what her music is about either. She's not really personal in her.
No, but she's writing love songs about romantic relationships, but also about family and friends. You know, so a lot of her songs have romantic themes, but they stand out, right, for not being like boy meets girl, girl meets boy type songs, right? They're sort of more nuanced, and that stands out, right? Because in this part of the 80s, most of the songs are boy meets girl, and that's where I think she's similar to like a Natalie Merchant, who, you know, does not identify, but she also chose that. So when I say that, I'm trying to do the thing that a lot of people are scared of, and I'm not scared, but like the idea of, you know what I mean, talking about the idea of, you know, that these are themes like openly, right, that are being brought in that were not addressed before. So I think that's something that stands out to me about Tracy Chapman too, and you know, that she takes her time in terms of releasing her albums, right? She spaces, I think the first two were pretty close together, and then she spaced it quite a bit for the rest of her career. And I always think of her like the last like 20 years, right? Like she'll resurface every once in a while, put out an album that wins a bunch of Grammys, and then kind of disappear again, right? Not disappear, but you know, I mean, in terms of popular consciousness, only to reappear. In that sense, it's sort of similar, like somebody like D'Angelo, right? Where he'll like do an album and then like 8 years later he'll do another one. People are like, wow, that's good, and then he'll disappear again completely and then kind of come back. So it's sort of an R&B staple. But yeah, I enjoyed this. I don't know if I would move this to like I love this album. I liked this album quite a bit. I liked songs like Why. I liked Talk About a Revolution, Across the Lines. She's a very direct songwriter, right? Like strong imagery. It's also kind of refreshing to see race talked about so directly. Like, because when you think about it, we really haven't covered a lot of albums that are explicitly talking about race in this. Like, it's touched on loosely, right? But not as a central theme of a recording like in this one. Her lyric writing is both direct, but I connect with it. And I hate to keep tying it back, but in that sense, she's very similar to like a Natalie Merchant, who I think does the same things, tackles social issues, writes direct lyrics. Some who would probably be critical of this would say that they're a little bit too on the nose or preachy, right, would be words you'd say, but I'm okay with it. It doesn't bother me because there's a conviction to it, and her presence and her voice kind of gives a level of gravitas to it, right? Which doesn't make it sound trivial or just thrown together like sloganeering, right? So there's my initial thoughts. I'd be happy to jump back in, but yeah, I would definitely give this a thumbs up. I enjoyed it. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, so I remember watching the video for Fast Car, and I remember I know talking about a revolution. I don't remember a video for that necessarily, but I do that song when I heard it come on as the first track here. It was definitely familiar. And I remember, I mean, in 1988, I'm 10 years old and I'm watching MTV, and it basically, that video is her. It's just like a close up of her mostly, right? And there's some other imagery of things happening, but it wasn't something that was gravitating.
It's black and
grabbing
white.
me.
I remember that.
Yeah, it wasn't grabbing me. I was still in the hair metal days, so I wanted to see more of the what is it, the stuff that Josh found terrible.
Yeah, more Britney Fox or something. Yeah.
Wanted more Britney Fox, and it's like Cinderella, So I didn't really pay it any mind, and then it wasn't until years later when I don't remember just hearing it in the ether somewhere, just kind of really starting to pay more attention to it and just go, okay, I think that's a pretty good song actually. Like I like the way that kind of builds and what she's doing with it, and it just grew on me as the years went on. And then this week listening to it, I'm just like, man, what a great song that is. That's just so on so many different levels. And I do agree her lyrics are very straightforward and, kind of simplistic, which is helpful for a guy like me who, reading into metaphors and stuff like that. Sometimes I get lost in I'm like, what is they talking about? I don't know, whatever. But this is like, it's very clear for pretty much every song here what she is singing about. I still thought that the lyrics for that were just great. The story that she's kind of telling, and the freedom that she's longing for, and then just, realizing that's never going to be the reality. And it's just, and the way her voice soars, the way the chorus kicks in. I like how it, she does several verses before she does the chorus, and then she does the chorus like again and again and again. And it's a fantastic song. And while you were talking, John, about the Grammys, I was looking up, what it was nominated for, what it won. So it was nominated for pretty much the big ones: Album of the Year, Song of the Year, Record of the Year. Didn't win any of those, but the Song of the Year and the Record of the Year, they both lost to the same song. And I'm just like, I want to throw up when I saw what this was, but they both lost to Don't Worry, Be Happy by Bobby McFerrin. And you're just, and I'm like, oh my God, are you serious? Like, it's such a better song. It's decidedly a much better song.
Remember we talked about doing a top 10 list of least favorite songs? That will be in consideration for that list when I do that. Yeah.
And the only thing, I just as a side note, like I could see like for the Record of the Year, because Record of the Year versus Song, Record of the Year is more about the actual production of the song, and the song is like the writing of the song. And so I get, because he's beating on his chest and all the instrumentation is all the, like, okay, it's a hard thing to do. It sounds cool, like that he's able to, I don't want to listen to it all the time, but like I appreciate the talent that's involved. So maybe, but like, I don't know. This is just, it's far and away such a much better song that has stood the test of time. So that's just another example of why awards are worth not worth a whole lot. But anyway, as for the rest of this record, I didn't know most of the other songs, and I really did like it. I think that I like the folk adult contemporary type sound of this. We've talked about that before, how adult contemporary can kind of wade in this sea of kind of like blandness, or just there's no edge musically, at least anyway, and it can just get boring. I didn't really find that here. I really enjoyed pretty much every song on this record. She does a little bit of the world music on Mountains O' Things, that she's got the pan flute and that type of thing. The a cappella version of Behind the Wall is, that's a unique thing. I'm not a huge fan of just full-blown a cappella songs, but, if you're going to throw it in here or there, that's fine. I'm not going to...
It's a short song.
And it's a short song too, and it's powerful too, which I'll get to in a second. But I really liked, gosh, Baby Can I Hold You? I know that looks like that was the third single from this record, but I don't remember ever hearing it. I thought that was a great song. That's just, her voice is great on it. I just love just everything that she's doing with it. So Why is a great song too, like kind of like the urgency of the folk there. So just really good, solid stuff. And yeah, it's certainly more of an adult record. And, and it's certainly, I don't think it would have been something that I would have listened to as a 10-year-old, but now, sitting here 35 years later, I very, very much enjoyed this. A very easy listen, in some ways similar to the Traveling Wilburys that we just covered, but it's a relatively quick listen. It's inoffensive. It's a good listen. It makes you think a little bit, and that's kind of what I was going to get back to, because you said something too, John, and a question that I wanted to bring up, and maybe you kind of answered it. But at what point does something become preachy? Because it's a very political. It's a very I'm gonna.
If I don't believe they believe in what they're saying, mostly fully is how I look at it. When they're when I feel like they're making a stance to make a stance, as opposed to, in my mind, feeling that it's either lived experience or something that is a part of their general.
She doesn't really tell people to change and stuff too. She's kind of just outlining what she sees. But it was very, like I said, it's very easy to tell what she's singing about. And she's singing about a variety of topics. It's not like it's just, one note, right? It's there's domestic violence. There's stuff about the police. There's stuff about racial relations. There's stuff about love. There's stuff about, just hunger and, treating people well, and, children. And, she's covering all the topics, right? All the politically, charged topics of the time and stuff. So people being jailed.
Yeah, right, exactly. So, but I think that's an interesting point. I hadn't thought of it like that, but yeah, I think the authenticity and just kind of just it plays a big part of it. That it seems like these are just songs that she wants to do, and she's not necessarily trying to start a movement necessarily, or make a scene or put herself at the forefront of it. She's just kind of letting the songs speak for themselves, and maybe that has something to do with it. But I guess I could see how some people might be bogged down in this. It's God, all right, I get because sometimes people don't want to hear stuff like this, because it is
the
painful.
personal is the political for people, you know what I mean? And that's the saying, but there's truth to it. And that's, I think, her take on politics, right? The personal narrative illustrates the larger human themes, right?
Right. So yeah, I think that's kind of interesting when she's like, that you said, Josh, about, how this is considered a socially conscious record, but it's all about, I don't know about that. It's all about perspective. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know how you look at this record and don't think of it as being, that's a very big part of the record. I'm not exactly sure what she means by that. But
she might be saying what you're calling politics is just my, lived experience, code of ethics, stuff like that. So politics comes with the idea that you're pushing against or, negotiating for things, right?
Okay.
But if you feel these are universal truths, you don't view them as politics necessarily. They're your
facts.
Personal mores, or personal narrative, mores, experiences, etc.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. But overall, as a piece of music, as an album, it's very solid. It's thumbs up. I really did like it.
Yeah, I see this album as kind of, well, first of all, we haven't really talked, I don't think we've talked about a black female singer-songwriter before to this extent. So that's one important thing. You're
right, Josh. Singer-songwriter, the combo, yeah.
Did we do was Roberta Flack and Nina? I mean, Nina Simone? Did they not write? I mean, they did. They weren't guitarists necessarily.
Yeah, I guess guitar based is what I'm thinking of. In Laura Nero, Suzanne Vega kind of vein.
Carole King.
Yeah. The other kind of lineage this calls back to is a lot of the folk of the 60s, especially kind of the political songs and protest songs against Vietnam. And we didn't cover a lot of that because we were more focused on kind of rock and roll, but that was kind of another lane that a lot of music was in. And then the socially conscious stuff that we talked about, Bill Withers, Roberta Flack, some of the other stuff in the 70s that we've talked about. So I think that's she's all kind of in.
Well, Marvin Gaye, What's Going On is probably, I mean, literally.
Exactly.
Yes,
Good call.
Sly
following
and the Family Stone.
Following in those footsteps. This album is, in some ways, it's, like you guys said, it's a very serious album. In some ways, it's talking about not uplifting things. Emily was listening to this with me because she loves Fast Car, but when she heard the rest of the album, she was like, "Oh man, this is a depressing album."
Yeah,
and it is. But I think her lyrics and her music kind of transcend that and make you listen. I found the album very captivating to listen to, and all of the songs are kind of pull you in, and even something like Across the Lines, when she sings the chorus on that, I just kind of really liked it. And the percussion on like Mountains of Things, and the kind of reggae, almost reggae sound to She's Got Her Ticket, that kind of drew me into. And despite, singing about domestic violence and kind of the police not coming, and on something like Behind the Wall, it's still just a kind of, it's a strength of her songwriting that it holds your attention, and held my attention. And I enjoyed the album despite, it being serious, for lack of a better, not serious. I mean, a lot of albums are serious, but I guess talking about real world things, is
very directly too.
Yeah, is the thing. So yeah, it's testament to her talent for that. If Not Now, which is another second to last song on the album, had some piano in it, which I thought worked really well. And yeah, I think it's a testament to the producer also, that the instrumentation around her, and she is front and center, but I think the songs have enough variety and catchy. It's always amazing what you can do with just an acoustic guitar in some ways. And you may have heard some of these beats before, or kind of chords, but not like this. And so is it an album that I would go back to all the time? There's not like kind of an earworm, although I guess Fast Car is. But even that song, if you listen to the lyrics, is melancholy and kind of nostalgic, just like John said about responsibilities and when we were free, I guess. And but again, that transcends the nature of the song, transcends it. So yeah, it's a thumbs up for me, and I'm glad I listened to the album. It was good.
There you go. Any final thoughts, guys?
No, I think I could go back to this. It's definitely, it has a place, and I don't think it's going to make the top of my rankings or whatever, but it was very. I'm glad we got, because she's always been somebody that's been out there that I know of. And you're right, Give Me One Reason, I think that's come from an album like several years after this, which is a great tune as well. And I'm glad we did this.
Yeah, it's not something I would seek out,
right,
not without this podcast. So yeah, I'm glad we listened to it also.
Just Fast Car on a playlist or something.
Right,
like that,
right.
Right. Yeah.
But isn't that the beautiful thing about this journey, guys, that we do cover?
Mm-hmm.
So
thanks, CTS.
Thanks, curator.